right. Our first speaker is Jocelyn Pedersen, and she's a graduate of Brigham Young University. She grew up in Pueblo, Colorado, and now lives with her husband and two of her children in American Fork, Utah. Jocelyn co-founded the nonprofits, the Benzodiazepine Information Coalition, the Council for Sustainable Healing, and serves as an advisor to the Alliance. Jocelyn is a subject in the upcoming As Prescribed documentary film and the author of Seeds of Hope, A Journey Through Medication and Madness Toward Meaning. She's a speaker at continuing education courses for doctors and healthcare providers, and is also a writer for the Mormon Women Project. And I'm going to drop some links for Jocelyn's work in the chat as well. Jocelyn has a book coming out this month, so that's really exciting. And I'm going to drop links for that so that you can follow up if you have more interest in all of her excellent work. Jocelyn?
Thanks, Catherine. And I just wanted to thank all of you who are involved with Braving Politics, because you guys are just such great examples to me of just sort of the open-mindedness and humility that it takes, really, I think, to get anything accomplished in sort of the political climate that we're in. So thank you guys. I just wanted to start off by saying that, yeah, I am a transplant to Utah. And for the most part, my life in Utah has been really good. I mean, my husband and I, he's from Las Vegas, and like where I grew up, like we're just so happy to be in a place that feels so safe, where we have such nice neighbors. There's a lot of really great things. And when I was asked to do this, I originally thought, oh, I'm not the person to talk about this, because like I don't think about race that much, to be honest. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, well, just because it's not something that's like a part of my daily life doesn't mean that systemic racism in particular has not profoundly impacted my life. And again, that's not to say that I don't have a very good life or that it's impeded me from having a good life, but it definitely has profoundly affected me. So one story that I would like to share with you before I go on to some statistics about particularly how youth can be affected by systemic racism in schools and things like that, is to share my experience from when I came out to go to school at BYU. So I got into the elementary education program. And in my first semester there was a lot of just kind of weirdness in the program, but the main thing that kind of kicked it all off for me is I got called in by my program facilitator. Now, if you're not aware, the way that the LED program works at BYU is you have these cohorts of about 30 girls, or 30 teachers, but most of them were girls at the time, sorry. And so you have about 30 teachers, and you have a director over this group. And then under the director is a facilitator. And that person is sort of the go-between between the teachers who are placed in schools and the director. And one day my facilitator calls me in for a meeting with my director, and she says, you know, there are some things here that are very concerning that if you don't take care of, you won't be able to continue in this program, which completely knocked me back, because I had no idea that there would be anything like this going on. And as we began our discussion, the first thing that she brought up was that my grades wouldn't be good enough. Now, the way that the program worked at the time, you were taking classes, but we had no grades yet. Like, I didn't even know what my grades were. And, but in order to be in the elementary education program, you had to maintain a 3.0. Well, I had an academic scholarship. That's how I was getting through school. And in order to have that scholarship, I had to maintain a 3.75, which I had already successfully done for 2 years. And I basically told her that and said I didn't think that maintaining a 3.0 was really going to be a problem for me. And so she said, oh, okay. So she went on. And the next thing that she brought up was this journal, this sort of daily log that we would have to keep of our experiences in the classroom. And one of the experiences that I documented was in my 5th grade classroom. There seemed to be 2 boys who seemed to kind of have a crush on me, because they would always try and sit right next to me, and they would kind of, you know, follow me around. And I just kind of briefly commented on that. And she accused me basically of being inappropriate with these students or encouraging it. I told her that my supervising teacher didn't even notice this because I was very discreet about redirecting them and getting them involved in other things, and that I didn't feel that was a problem. Anyway, this went on for quite some time, to the point where I really honestly wanted to break down and start crying. It was so awful, all these things that she was accusing me of that weren't true. At the end of this, we got to the point where we all agreed that I had bad handwriting, which is very true. I have terrible handwriting. And I blame it on my dad because he's a doctor and it's genetic. But anyway, so I had to type up all of my lesson plans. And this was at a time where people didn't all have laptops. So I actually had to go out of my way to go to computer center or to whatever and print it. So it wasn't the easiest thing, but I did it just to get her off of my back. I found out that I was the only person that didn't break down crying, that she had actually done this to several other girls in the program. And I noticed that throughout the rest of the semester, these girls would really be picked on. Like one girl in particular, I remember she turned in a lesson plan that she and another girl had worked on together. So this other girl turns in a lesson plan and she got an A, but my friend got a D for the exact same lesson plan. So anyway, I thought things were okay. I thought I had avoided that. And then at the very end of the semester, what happens is the observations that your facilitator makes of you of going out into the field and observing you teaching counts for 30% of your grade. So before the end of the semester, I had like an A+ in that cohort thing. And then I get my grade and I have like a B-, which meant she'd basically given me less than an F. So I went into my director and I said, look, obviously this person doesn't like me. You've seen this, you've seen her falsely accuse me. This has kind of been a miserable semester for me, to be honest. And I'm probably going to switch to another cohort because it's just been such an awful experience. At which point my director told me that maybe I'd be more comfortable in the inner city cohort. I'm Hispanic, in case you weren't aware of that, because I've got my J-Lo blonde hair now and whatever, it wasn't back then. But anyway, so that was interesting, and and I asked her if she would help me with this thing, because I mean, that was an insane grade to give me, right? And she said, oh, no, I can't, no, it's between you and her, no. And my director was a very nice lady, her name was Nancy. She had been a Relief Society president of her ward at church, and she would get up and bear her testimony to us in the middle of class about how much she just loved all of her Black and brown children in the classrooms that she used to teach in, all the same. But when I came to her with this problem, it was like, no, I don't want to ruffle any, or I don't know what her reasoning was, but she didn't want to get involved. She said it was between me and my facilitator. So I kind of figured it was a waste of time, but I went to my facilitator anyway, just to try. And I said, hey, look, I know whatever, I don't know what it is between us. But I mean, I've had to go around and observe other teachers as part of my assignment. And I know I'm at least average. I mean, I'm at least a C, And I said, but my teachers I've taught under, they all give me raving reviews. So I know I'm a pretty good teacher. And she told me, well, there's no way you could possibly know that. And I asked her why. And she said, because you're one of the lower end teachers. And then that was it. That was like end of discussion. And it really, I was kind of shocked. And so it took me a minute for it to kind of wash over me. And I'm like, what does she mean lower end? Because she'd never seen me teach before. This is my first semester. And then it hit me. I was like, oh, the Hispanic teacher, the Asian teacher, the obese teacher, the girl with the facial deformity, she had put us all together at the same schools. We were all considered the lower end teachers in her mind. So I try to get my other friends to go with me to Equal Opportunity Services and file a complaint. I actually had a Native American friend also in the program, and she's like, oh no, I already have this whole thing going on with Indian services, because they wouldn't even let me into the program. And so, which is crazy, because like I'm sorry, but it's an easy program to get into at BYU. If they have too many girls apply, they just create a new cohort, and they hadn't let her in 2 semesters in a row. So she didn't want to muddy the waters. So I'm like, okay, I understand. But I couldn't get anybody else to go in with me. And it's a scary experience. I'd never done that before, but it's anonymous. I encouraged other girls to go in who had, it wasn't just my cohort. I had heard of other things going on throughout the program, like this multicultural class where it was being taught by a white gentleman who stood up on the first day and said, I know I'm here to tell you to be fair to Jamal and Paco, but I'm here to tell you that racism goes the other way. And that was like his introduction to multicultural studies at BYU. But I couldn't. And I was told by Equal Opportunities after they did an investigation that the way the program was set up, it was just too subjective and they couldn't really prove discrimination because every cohort was so different and whatever. But the good news is a few years later when I was teaching, I came back to Utah, I was teaching and I had a student teacher put under me who was going to BYU, and through her I found out that the program had eventually been put on probation for discrimination. None of the teachers were allowed to grade any students' papers. They had to send them off-site to a separate entity. And after that first year of probation, they failed. They actually failed. They didn't meet the standards. So they were put on a second year of probation. And I believe they failed that second year too. So it was a pretty, to me, I share this because I feel like this is a very obvious case of systemic racism. A lot of people out there, they say, oh, there's no laws, that's, there's not systemic racism because we've changed these laws. And it's like, well, yeah, but there is. It's just maybe if you haven't experienced it, if that hasn't been your experience, then you don't recognize it. But it definitely does impact. And if honestly, if I hadn't been getting like extremely good grades that semester, I could have lost my scholarship. That could have impacted my entire education and my career, from one person, not just one person being racist, but then my director and then the program manager and all these people allowing that to happen, even if they didn't perpetuate that racism themselves.